To live your purpose and max your meaning, as we've mentioned before, you got to know who you are. You got to know what story you want to be part of or you are supposed to be part of. And in order to do that, we need a map. And that's what I want to share with you. I want to share with you a map of who you are. I saw this cute little commercial when people had maps. Today people have Waze, but it wasn't a commercial, it was a cartoon. So I saw this cute cartoon. And it's a fellow, and he's on a highway. He's driving. His wife is next to him. She's got a map, paper map. You know what that is. And she's looking and figuring out. And she turns to her husband, and she says, honey, I think we're lost. And he says, yeah, but we're making great time. Sometimes people are lost, and they're making great time. They're very busy, but they're not productive because they don't know where they're going. So in order to really, really know who you are and where you can go, I want to provide for you a map. And I call that map me, myself, and I, based on the Kabbalah. Who's the me, who's the self, who's the I? So a number of years ago, a student of mine was at my home for Friday night dinner, for Shabbat dinner. And she was speaking about her mother, and she had mentioned in passing, she was talking about her family, and she mentioned in passing that her mother was in Japan. So I asked her, well, what's your mother doing in Japan? She said, my mother, she's looking for herself. All right, fine. So, people hear that. People look for themselves. But my daughter, who's Israeli, she understands English, but not incredibly well. When she hears English, she translates into Hebrew into her head. She was kind of following the conversation. But she was stumped by what this girl just said. And she turned to me, she said in Hebrew, Abba, Mahi Amra, Daddy, what did she say? So now I have to take this very familiar phrase, Ima Shala, her mother, hi Japan, she's in Japan, vihi mechapeset et atzma, she's looking for herself. Now, get inside the head of a little 5-year-old girl. She realized that she actually translated the sentence correctly, and she didn't know what to do with it. And her brown eyes went wide and worried, and she went like this, whoa, whoa. And I suddenly got in her head, and I realized this is very scary. Like, what, the mother was in Japan, like in a hotel. She's checking out a hotel. Suddenly she's looking around with myself. Where's myself? I could have sworn I had myself. She realizes she's lost herself. I mean, the last time I saw myself was in the bathroom mirror. Maybe I'm still there. She goes to the receptionist. Excuse me, I think I might have left myself in the room. Oh, we're sorry, ma'am. We've cleaned out the room. But there is a lost and found. I mean, how do you lose yourself? How do we even talk about this? How can you be you and yourself? What does that really mean? But we do talk about that. We talk about I'm looking for myself. People talk to themselves. Who's the me that's talking to me? How can I be both the subject and the object of the same sentence? People talk about I want to like myself. Well, who's the you that'll like you? I'm going to take myself out to dinner. Well, who's going to pay? A lot of people, sadly, I meet, don't like themselves. So who's the you that doesn't like you? So who's the me? Who's the self? Who's the I? Now, a number of years ago, I was in a store in the Upper West Side, a supermarket, and a fellow walked into the supermarket, and he was clearly drunk, and he started screaming, I'm going to kill myself! I'm going to kill myself! I'm not from New York City. I'm not used to this. I don't know how much that happens in New York City, but I was really kind of taken aback by that, and so was everybody else, because they were afraid that he might kill them. So the police come in, and management calls the police, and the policeman walks in there, and the guy's screaming, I'm going to kill myself, I'm going to kill myself. The policeman was so sweet, and he said to him, why do you want to kill yourself? So the guy's thinking, because nobody spoke to him. So he thinks, and he goes, well, because my mama hates me, and my papa hates me, and actually, quite frankly, I hate me. So the policeman says, yeah, but what are you going to do? Why are you going to kill yourself? So he thinks, he said, well, because when I kill myself, I'm going to be happy, yeah. I'm going to be real happy when I kill myself. So the policeman says, well, wait a second. Listen to what you're saying. If you kill yourself, you're going to be dead. The guy goes, what? I said, yeah. And if you're dead, how will you know you're happy? You're dead. Now you're talking to a drunk guy, right? So the guy's thinking, he's going, you mean, wait a second. You mean if I kill myself, I'm going to be dead? The policeman said, that's right. The guy said, and if I'm dead, how will I know I'm happy? I'm dead. The policeman says, that's right. The guy goes, oh man, I can't even kill myself and be happy. Sad story. But Who did he think would survive his death? But the truth is that what this drunken man intuited is a self that transcends his body, a self that transcends the character he's playing, which is a drunken fellow. So let's deeply understand who's the me, who's the self, who's the I, who are you? As I mentioned earlier, you are your purpose. So who are you? Why are you? And how can you live the best life you can? That'll be next. I'm sharing with you a map of who you are. The me, the self, the I. And I want to start off with the self. Who really are you? The self is what we call soul. Now, most people think they have a soul, they have a body, they have a soul. You don't have a soul, you are a soul. And you as a soul come into this world to play a character, which is the me. In other words, soul is playing a character right now called Rabbi David Aaron. But I'm not Rabbi David Aaron. I'm a soul playing the character Rabbi David Aaron, and soul is talking to soul. And as I mentioned before, in order to live a purposeful life, a meaningful life, you have to get in touch with the true you. The true you, the essential you, is soul. And we had mentioned before that this fellow wanted to kill himself, but somehow thought he would survive his suicide. Well, what he was talking about is himself as a soul. This man intuited that I'm a soul, and I'm playing a character. And who did he want to kill? He wanted to kill the character, and he thought he'd walk away as a soul. Let's take, for instance, me, David Aaron. I'm not Rabbi David Aaron. I'm a soul, and I'm playing Rabbi David Aaron. And I want to share with you some news that I'm not excited to share. Rabbi David Aaron is going to die. But I, soul, am not going to die. Because the Torah teaches that you are immortal. You are a soul, and you will never die. And so Rabbi Aaron will die, and I hope to play Rabbi David Aaron in good health till 120, and please say amen. But when Rabbi David Aaron dies, soul, the one who's talking to you right now, doesn't die, because souls don't die. Imagine a guy, he's an actor, and he gets a part that he really, really wanted, and he gets it, and he's very excited about it, and he's going through the script, and he sees that in scene 8, he dies. He freaks out. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I got a long future in front of me. I want to be able to do a lot more films. So he doesn't know what to do. I can't play this. He runs back to the director and the producers. Excuse me, I can't do this film. The guy says, well, what's wrong? What's the problem? He says, well, I don't want to die. He said, what do you mean you don't want to die? You're not going to die. He said, well, it says right here in chapter 8, I die. He said, you're not going to die. The character's going to die. You're going to get up and win an Oscar and get a few more films from there. So the first thing I want to introduce you to is the immortal you. You are a soul. You are immortal, and you will never die. And so let's get in touch with this a little more. How many of you ever asked this crazy question? Who would I have been if my mother would have married another man? Now that's crazy. I don't know if you ever asked that question. When I was a kid, I asked that question. I actually even thought I was adopted because I'm the only family member that has red hair. Nobody has red hair in my family, and I thought that was weird. And I asked my mother about that, and my mother said, well, your father had red hair when he was a little boy. My father had black hair, so how did red turn black? I don't know. So I thought I was maybe adopted. Maybe I'm really not David Aaron, but I was pretty sure I probably wasn't adopted because I knew my parents would never spend that kind of money on me. But you are a soul. Now, have you ever asked the question, who would I have been if my mother would have married a man? Now, that's crazy. You wouldn't have been. No, somehow we intuit that I would be. I just wouldn't have been in this body. I wouldn't have been playing this character. How about this? How many of you can honestly say that you're not the same person today that you were a year ago, 2 years ago? Well, you know, most of us say, yeah, I'm not the same person I was a year ago. I'm very different in so many ways. Well, again, that's the same thing. How could you not be the same person you were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Well, that's the difference between the me and the self. The self is the essential you. Me is the character that you're playing. I once read this cute little book, which was Letters to God. Little children writing letters to God. And so one of the letters was, Dear God, please, if I have to come back and live another life, please don't bring me back as Jennifer Horton, because I hate her guts. How does a child even intuit that I could be playing another character? My son, when he was 13 years old, I took him to Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Museum. And because there's a very large Holocaust story in our family, it's a very hard story for me to deal with. And I took my kid when he was 13 to Yad Vashem, and I told him a terrible, terrible, sad story about my aunt whose baby was murdered in front of her by the Nazis. Now we're going to fast forward. I told my son that story amongst other stories I'd shared. About 3-4 months later, I'm with my son in town. And my son turns to me, and out of nowhere says, you know, Daddy, I'm that baby. I said, you're not a baby, you're 13 years old. He said, no, Daddy, I'm that baby. I said, what baby? He said, the baby you told me about, your aunt's child? I'm that baby. Now, I don't know, maybe I can take my kid to a hoop, but what does that mean? So actually, in Torah tradition, especially in Kabbalah, there's discussion about reincarnation, that reincarnation, that souls play different characters throughout history. So the first thing I want you to know about you are a soul. You are immortal. You come into this world to play a character. But who is the character that you're playing? And again, who are you and why are you? And we're going to continue next. So you are a soul. You don't have a soul. You are a soul. And you come into this world to play a character. But the truth is, but who are you is ineffable, indescribable. Everything you describe about yourself is not about yourself at all. It's about your character. Anything you can say about your IQ or your EQ or your job or your emotional tendencies or whatever. Everything you describe about yourself is not about you, but it's about your character. But you are indescribable. Now, if I'm indescribable, then what's the difference between you and me? Well, the difference is that you are a kind of a field of awareness. The Hebrew word for I, ani, comes from the Hebrew word an, which means to wear. And really, the self is like a field of awareness. I am. It's like a field of awareness. And but it's indescribable. It's just completely indescribable. The Kabbalah refers to the self like in the metaphorical way as light. Like light cannot be described. Light which enables you to see cannot be seen. So when you're in your room and you see like a ray of light, you didn't really see a ray of light. You saw a ray of dust. The light is illuminating dust, so you get this feeling of a ray. But the truth is that the light that enables you to see is itself unseen. And so too, you are a soul. You are the seeing. You are the seer, but you cannot be seen. You cannot be described. And so you are an awareness. You are an awareness. But think of awareness as having different facets. Seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling. So, like, what does seeing look like? What's the color, shape, or texture of seeing? Seeing, which enables us to identify color, texture, shapes, cannot be described by any color, texture, or shapes. What does hearing sound like? What does touch feel like? What does smell like? And yet these are very different facets of awareness. So let's say you're seeing and I'm hearing and he's tasting and he smells. Now he's smelling, and everybody has a different facet of awareness. So again, in order to live our purpose, the goal is to be whole, to be totally you. So it's important to first know that the essential you is the indescribable, ineffable you, that sense of self, that pure awareness. And you are playing a character. But the question is, awareness of what? You are awareness. Awareness of what? So just for a second, I want you to close your eyes and be aware of yourself. Just be self-aware. And my guess is you're experiencing what I'm experiencing right now, which is there's a sense that I'm in my head. And it's almost as if like there's this little guy in my head, that's me, and I'm looking at some kind of screen that's connected to my eyes, and I've got some earphones connected to my ears, and I got these levers that are moving my hands. But somehow when we close our eyes, we sense that we're in here. Even though when you ask a person to point to themselves, almost always they point like this. But the truth is, when we think about it, our awareness seems to be in our head. But really when you think about it, the only head that you know is the head that you're aware of. And so how do you know whether you're in your head or whether actually, I know this sounds a little freaky, but that your head is in you? And you really can't prove it because the only head you know is the head that you perceive, the head that you're aware of. And so too, this room. So I experience myself in the room, but then again, the only room I know is the room that I perceive, the room that is within the field of the perception of awareness. How can I prove that I'm actually in the room? Maybe the room's in me. Or for instance, look at the closest object to you right now. Let's say it's your phone. It's your smartphone. So the way it looks is the way it looks, but imagine if you look at it through a super zoom microscope. Now it's not going to look like that at all anymore. So the shape and the texture of the smartphone is dramatically going to change if you look at it through a microscope. Which means that what appears to you, the way things look, is the way you look at things. And what actually appears to you is actually appearing in you. And that's pretty scary when you think about that. The self transcends time and space in all objects. Everything we perceive in terms of time and space and objects is really within the field of our awareness, and that's what Albert Einstein said. Albert Einstein said that time and space are schemes of thinking. And actually the Kabbalah will agree to that. We're kind of like a computer screen. Imagine your computer screen, and on the screen there's a clock going, and there's cars and people, and so all of them, from your point of view, you're in a world that's fast moving with a lot of people around you. But the truth is that all the people that you see and all the movement that's happening and all the time that's passing is actually happening within you. It's kind of like dreaming. Like imagine you have a dream. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but you ever have like a bad dream and suddenly you say, oh, this is a really bad dream. I want to get out of this dream. Maybe this is a dream. I hope this is a dream. And you ever try to wake yourself up from a dream, and then you get caught in between. You're kind of still in the dream, but you're kind of pulling yourself out of the dream. And then you realize that all the people in your dream and all the places that you were in and all the time that was passing was you weren't in that space. You weren't with those people. Those people were with you. That space was within you. And so, according to Kabbalah, the self is a field of awareness, like a computer, like a screen. And that's why we intuit that we'll never die. Because in essence, the world and time exist within us. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there is no objective reality. There is an objective reality, but you, that space of awareness, that the ani, that my space, so to speak, that is not in time or space, but rather time and space are within that field of awareness, but an awareness of an objective reality. What that basically means is that the true self is now. Awareness is now. If you think of the past or the future, all that is, you're being aware of that now. In order to fulfill your purpose and really max your meaning, you need to learn to be more present, not in a rush. So let's go back to the car example. When does the car really feel happy? Not when it really gets to its destination. I feel good about that. But the car enjoys the journey. It wants to be serving transportation. It certainly wants to be part of a good story, providing a service for a good story. But the joy is in the moment. And so it's important. Purpose is happening when you're living your true self. Your true self transcends time and space. So don't be in a rush. A friend of mine once said that his professor taught him that this is a rat race, and just know if you win it, you're still a rat. This is not a rat race. This is a spiritual journey. In order to enjoy the purpose and meaning of life, we have to slow down, be more present, be ourselves. We'll talk more about that next. A number of years ago, I did a meditation workshop. I asked everybody to close their eyes and share with each other, share with everybody, what do they see, what are they experiencing? So one fellow who was very uncomfortable with the whole thing, and he was quite cynical, he said, well, I saw nothing and I experienced nothing. And I said to him, well, that's actually what I wanted you to do. Because I wanted you in this meditation to become aware of you as the seer, rather than getting lost in what you're seeing, what's being seen. And I'm hoping with your permission that you'll join me. You've probably heard of mindfulness. I want to help you understand a new practice called soulfulness, to get in touch with the self. Again, to live your purpose is to be the true you, the total you, to be holy, W-H-O-L-L-Y, the total you. And so let's get in touch with the self, the essence of you. And so I'm going to ask you all to close your eyes, and I want you to just be relaxed, and I want you to be aware. I want you to be aware of your physical sensations. Be aware of your back against the chair, or your feet against the floor, or your hands on your knees, whatever. Just be aware. Just be aware of physical sensations. And if we had more time, we would spend more time with this, but just to give you a peek of this, and just realize that you have sensations. You have physical sensations, but you are not your physical sensations. You're looking at them. You're aware of them. Now I want you to climb the ladder of awareness. I want you to go to emotions. I want you to be aware of any emotions that you're feeling. You know, you're probably feeling really happy because you're listening to David Aaron, but what are you feeling? Just be aware of emotions. Just aware of emotion. Maybe you're feeling a little sad. Maybe you're feeling a little anxious, but just be aware of emotions. Look at those emotions. Observe those emotions. And say in your head, I have emotions. I have emotions. I am not my emotions. I'm looking at them. I'm observing them. I'm not them. Now I want you to climb the ladder of soulfulness and be aware of thoughts. And thousands of thoughts. I once read an article that said we are hit by 70,000 thoughts a day. And so just look at thoughts. Just imagine each thought is like a leaf in a stream. Just let it just be carried by that stream. Don't get lost in the thought. Don't be carried by the thought. Don't become the thought. Look at the thought. Be aware of the thought. Now in your mind say, I have thoughts. I have thoughts. I am not my thoughts. Well, if I'm not my physical sensations, and if I'm not my emotions, and if I'm not my thoughts, who am I? that's when you can open your eyes. You are the self. You are the soul. You are that space of awareness where the emotions and the thoughts and the physical sensations were arising in that. It's like that computer screen we had mentioned. But you're not your thoughts, and you're not your emotions, and you're not your physical sensations. You're that pure sense of awareness. And that's the practice of soulfulness. So if I'm not my thoughts, and I'm not my emotions, and I'm not my physical sensations, who am I? I am a soul. And why is it so important to know and to live and to practice soulfulness? Because what happens is people get lost in their thoughts. They get lost in their emotions. They get lost in their feelings and their sensations. And in order for you to be in the driver's seat of your life, you need to learn how to be above that and not be controlled by it. But you are the soul. So the character is woven from a fabric of thoughts and emotions and physical sensation. But you are a soul, and you want to be able to be in the driver's seat of your life. And we'll talk more about that next in terms of acting out of character, the invincible you. Many years ago, when my son was only 13, he was diagnosed with a fatal illness. And I remember anybody would be devastated. I was devastated, and went home, and I started to cry. And I experienced something really extraordinary. Somehow, as much as I was deeply involved in the emotions I was feeling, there was something about me that was watching me cry. And there was something about me, like a little voice in my head that says, we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. And that's a very strange experience. And I don't know, maybe you've had that experience. Maybe you've had a really challenging moment. Maybe you felt really very sad, or maybe you started to cry. Do you remember yourself in the tears, but somehow there's something about you that transcends those tears, and you can look at it and kind of encourage yourself? It's like somehow, and this is a mystery of the human soul, we can be both the audience and the actor of our lives. And sometimes we're the audience, and sometimes we're the actor, and sometimes we can somehow oscillate between the two. Have you ever maybe lost your temper and you start yelling? And then there's something about you that is witnessing you, watching you yelling. And the little voice in you, you start to say to yourself, the you that's yelling, the actor that's yelling, the audience inside you start saying, hey, this looks bad. This is a real mistake. You're gonna really, really regret this. You better stop yelling. That's a really strange thing about human beings, that we can be in our experience while outside our experience. This is the higher invincible you. This is the transcendental you. This is the strange power of the soul. Living our purpose, we need to be able to master that ability to, while being in our experience, we're able to also witness and take control. I remember I had an opportunity to teach an actor. I don't know if many of you are familiar with this man. He's sadly no longer with us, a legendary actor by the name of Kirk Douglas. And I had the opportunity to teach him Torah for many years. And I shared with him this idea, and he said to me, you know, Rabbi, this is exactly what they teach you in acting. To be a great actor, you have to be immersed in your part, but you have to also be able to be a little outside your part, watching your part. He said, you know, very often people will come up to me and say, Kirk, you were amazing. You just got lost in Spartacus. You became Mickey Marcus. And I would say to him, I didn't get lost in Spartacus. You got lost in Spartacus. I didn't become Mickey Marcus. You got lost in Mickey Marcus. I'm an actor, and I have to, on one hand, immerse myself completely in the character, but I have to also be aware and outside the character, because I have to land in front of the frame of the camera. This is also, in order to live our purpose, to be our true selves, to be soulful, We have to be able to, on one hand, be immersed and embrace the character we're playing, be immersed in our thoughts, not lost in our thoughts, really experience our emotions, but not be controlled by our emotions, feel ourselves, be in our bodies, but not controlled or defined by our bodies. When we have that ability to be in and yet also be an observer, this is the power of soulfulness. You are a soul and you have the ability for self-awareness. It's a very interesting Jewish law, a Torah law. You have to feed your animal before you feed yourself. Very sweet and it's very, very sensitive. But the question is, what is that really based on? I'm hungry. My dog's hungry. No, you got to feed your dog before you feed yourself. Why is that so important? Well, one of the understandings is that the dog, when he's hungry, he becomes hunger. He becomes immersed in his hunger. He doesn't have the ability of self-transcendence to kind of step away from his hunger and say, look, I know I'm hungry, but I remember that I've had food in the past, and I know this guy, he's pretty good at that. He's probably going to give me something soon. But somehow, according to our tradition, animals don't seem to have that ability to step out of their emotions. So when a dog is hungry, he can't look at his hunger and say, hey, I'm hungry, and and maybe I could delay gratification there. Therefore, according to Judaism, an animal who doesn't have the kind of soul that we have, this transcendental soul, an animal, when he feels hunger, he becomes his hunger. A human being, when they feel hunger, they can look at that hunger, remind themselves that there was time where they had food and they know that they will get food and they can wait. But I am not my hunger. I am beyond my hunger. And so in the art of living and the practice of living soulfulness, I want to next teach you a whole new language, the language of soulfulness. And we're going to go into what I call not ulpan, but soulpan. I'd like to teach you a new language. I call this soulpan, not ulpan. In Israel, if you want to learn Hebrew, you go to ulpan. But I want to teach you how to think and talk soulfully. And so I remember when my father was in his 80s and he was very weak. He was lying in bed. And he had been deteriorating over many years, but specifically pretty quickly over these last few weeks. And I was by my father's side, and my father looked at me and he said something really that shocked me. He said, you know, my body is breaking down and there's no spare parts to your body, but in my head, I'm 17 years old. See, that's a person who thinks and talks soulfully. Because my father lived as a soul. Souls are ageless. We talked about how the soul transcends time and space. Souls are ageless. And my father sensed that youthfulness. And so when you're in touch with yourself and you're really living you, you'll be youthful. You'll have that youthfulness. And then my father died. But I told you, souls don't die, so my father didn't die. My father left his body, but he didn't die. And people would ask me, well, where are you burying your father? Well, when you talk soul talk, I'm not going to bury my father. People thought I was crazy. You're not going to bury your father. I said, no, I'm going to bury his body. But my father is still alive and well because my father is a soul. And he transcends his body and he transcends his character. My father is immortal just like you, just like I, in terms of the soul. So in speaking soulfully, never talk about death. Torah teaches that death is an illusion. I mean, bodies go, but souls leave their bodies. I was by the side of my mother when she left this world. And I can tell you, I realized I wasn't witnessing death. I was witnessing birth. And actually the Talmud says that right before a person leaves their body, so to speak, the angel of death puts this little sour drop in their mouth. And I actually saw that. My mother was she's pretty much in a coma at that point. And then suddenly my mother, I could see in her lips, it was like a little drop of something sour in her mouth. And she just left. And it was really unbelievable because at that point, her body became like a board. And when they came and to take her body out for burial, they lifted her legs and her head, and the body didn't sag. It was like a board. And I said, I'm not my body. In Soul Talk, in Soul Pun, we teach to talk a soul language. I'm not my body. I have a body. I'm not my age. When people ask you how old you are, say, I'm ageless. My body is 60 years old. My body's 50 years old. That's my body. That's like when people identify with their age. That's as silly as identifying with the age of your car. This is my car. Because I have a car that was manufactured in 1980, that makes me 1980. You meet some people that are really old, but it's because they got so immersed in their body. They think I am my body, and they start to see themselves wrinkling, and they say, well, I'm old. You are a soul, and you are not old. So in Soul Pun, we learn to talk about ourselves as souls. And we didn't talk about the age of the soul. We talk about the age of our body. Also in Soul Talk, we're very careful not to have labels, not to say, I'm depressed. I'm a depressed person. You're not a depressed person. In Soul Talk, we learn to say, I feel depressed. Again, you're a soul. Look at that feeling. You are feeling that depression, and nobody's telling you to deny that. And no one's telling you to stay away from that. Feel it. Don't be it. So never say, I am depressed, because if you say, I am depressed, then you become depression. How are you going to step away from that and step out of that? You're a soul, and you can step away from that. Look at that depression. You might want to imagine, what color is my depression? What shape is my depression? Maybe give your depression a name. Call it Dan Depression. My name's Dave. But you want in Soul Talk to stay in the place of being anchored in yourself in the driver's seat, as I mentioned before. You're a soul. And yes, you have feelings, you have emotions. Don't ever say, I'm angry. Because if you say, I'm angry, then you become anger. How are you going to step away from that? Say, I feel angry. Look at that anger. Control that anger. You see, in Soul Talk, you have this ability to step away from that, not be controlled by that. Maybe you recall that you lost your cool. You start yelling at somebody. And then the doorbell rings. Isn't it amazing how you could just stop and open the door and smile? Hey, how you doing? How you been? That's a soul moment. You realize, I'm not my anger. And so in Soul Talk, just as we mentioned before in the practice of soulfulness, you have feelings, you have thoughts, you have physical sensations. Never say, I'm sick. You're not sick, you're a soul. There's no such thing as a sick soul. My body is sick. I'm not my body. There are some great sages that actually, I know one story of a sage that didn't want to be put under sedation while he was having surgery. He was so able to transcend his body. Now, I'm not suggesting you do that. I'm just giving you a sign, an understanding that we have to learn to be ourselves. To live your purpose is to be wholly, completely you. You are a soul. You have a character. We're going to talk about the character soon. But you don't want to get lost in your thoughts. This is one of the amazing things about the study of Talmud. In the study of Talmud, one of the amazing things about Talmud, the Koreans have found that the Talmud is an amazing exercise, and now in Korea they've translated the Talmud into Korea. What is going on? Because the Talmud teaches you divergent thinking. In the Talmud, when you learn Talmudic, you get inside this rabbi's head. How does he see this verse? How does he see this law? And then you step out of his head and you go into the other person's head. In soulfulness, you learn how to see through other people's eyes. And in Talmud, you have these conversations or disputes. There's a lot of disputes in the study of Talmud. And you realize that you could say something wrong, but you could never be wrong. And you realize that you can be humble when your learning partner points out that what you said was wrong. You don't take it personally and say, oh my gosh, I'm wrong, I made a mistake. You made a mistake, but you're not a mistake. In Soul Pun, we learn to distinguish the difference between the self and the thoughts, the emotions, the feelings. A number of years ago, I was at an amusement park. And I saw this lady dragging her son, screaming at her. He was a little boy, he was 5 years old. His mother screamed at him and said, "You stupid piece of monkey." I couldn't believe it. How can someone call their kid a stupid piece of monkey? But it's even worse, is this boy's gonna grow up and he's gonna say, "I'm stupid, I'm a monkey." In soul talk, we learn to say, "I'm a soul." And there are no labels on souls. Labels are for packages, not for people. So in soul talk, when we learn Ulpan or Soulpan, we learn to speak as souls. I'm not my age, I'm not my thoughts. I could think wrong, but I'm not wrong. I can feel depressed, but I'm not depressed. I can feel anger, but I'm not my anger. In Soulpan, we learn to speak a language of empowerment. For you to live your purpose, you have to be in the driver's seat. We're talking about me, self, and I. We've already identified that the self is the soul. You don't have a soul, you are a soul. The me is the character. You are like an actor playing a character. And the character is really important. We just don't want to get lost in our character. In order to live our purpose, we have to take our character seriously. But we need to know how to manage our lives, to live our purpose, to live our meaning. The Talmud says that when you are born, you are given traits. The Talmud says something very interesting astrologically, that if a person is born at the time of Mars, the planet Mars, which I don't know what that means, then you will have a bloodthirsty character. And you'll be given that character to play. And so the question is, well, so what choice do I have? The Talmud says you are a soul. You're not your character. So you've been given to play a bloodthirsty character. You have a character trait of being bloodthirsty. But now you can choose what you want to do with that. You know, if you're bloodthirsty, you could choose to be a serial murderer. If you're bloodthirsty, you could choose to be a surgeon. There's nothing wrong with being bloodthirsty. What's wrong is what you do with it. You know, in fact, the Kabbalah says something even more amazing. It says that you're not given a character to play. You're actually asked, do you want to play this character? Do you want these character traits? And you, as a soul, before you got that part, said, yes, I want to play that part. So when a person says, I'm a victim, I was born this way, you know, no, you have character traits that you were given. And these character traits you gave permission, and you said, yes, I want these character traits. But now the question is, what do you do with it? You know, in astrology, and the Talmud talks about astrology, but you should just know that in Torah tradition, we never ever use astrology for horoscopes. But in astrology, there is an idea called astrological twins. And someone showed me a picture of astrological twins. It's two people that are born at the same time in the same place. And they have no family connection whatsoever. And that's really bizarre, you know. And I saw a picture, they look like identical twins. And that's because when they were born at that time, they both have the same astrological sign, rising sign, whatever it's called. And they have the same character traits, so much so they actually look the same. And so I asked somebody what is astrology thinking about? Is there no free will? So this person said, astrology never talks about the soul. Astrology talks about the character traits that you're born with, but you're a soul. And what you do with those character traits is up to you. Imagine you've got two kids and they've both been given the same 5 colored crayons. Well, one kid does with those 5 colors is completely different than what the other one does with their 5 colors. And so you come into this world, you're a soul, you come into this world and you're given character traits. What you do with those character traits is your choice. You know, I heard a story about a fellow that went to a great master. And he asked that master, what is the secret to life? And the master said, wood, wires, and nails. Go contemplate. Oh my gosh. I was hoping he'd say like a bowl of strawberries or cherries or something like that. But wood, wires, and nails. He had no clue what he's talking about. So he went home and he contemplated, what is the secret to life? What is the secret to finding purpose and meaning in my life? And he thought about it, just gave up. Wood, wires, and nails. Well, 10 years goes by, and he's sitting on his porch, and he hears suddenly this enchanting guitar music. So beautiful. He says, I want to find this guy. Who is this guy? Somebody's playing this beautiful music down the street. So he walks down the street, and there in the park, there's this guy, and he's playing his guitar under the moonlight. And this fellow's sitting there, and he's enjoying listening to the music. Suddenly in his head, wood, wires, and nails. He got the secret of life. You see, with wood, wires, and nails, you could build a guitar. With wood, wires, and nails, you could build a weapon. There's nothing wrong with wood, wires, and nails. It's what you, soul, choose to do with it. I think this is really important. When people think, I've got a character flaw, nobody has a character flaw. All character traits can be assembled and used for good purposes. It's what you do with it. Is there something wrong with the attribute of anger? Well, yes. If you act out your anger and hurt people, yes. But to not feel angry when you see evil in the world, well, that's pretty troubling. You know, you don't have the capacity to feel anger. You know, you don't have the capacity to feel anger. You should feel anger and use that anger to do good and to help people. But when a person thinks that I've got these character traits and there's just something wrong with me, there's nothing wrong with any of us. You're a soul, and there's no such thing as a sick soul. You're a soul. You're not your character, but you have character. You have a range of character traits. Now the question is, what do you do with them? How do you assemble them? How do you use them for the purposes that not you have, but that you are? Because we learned already, you are your purpose. What purpose did you come to this world? You're the embodiment of goodwill. You're a soul. You're a self-aware goodwill. And you've been given a character to play. Now the question is, how do you assemble those character traits in order to serve in the most highest way and the most loving way you can? A purposeful life is when you, as a soul, use your character traits in service of the purpose you came to live, in contributing in the story that you're part of. And we've already learned, whatever part you play and whatever traits you have, we're here to serve in our unique way to be part of a story of love, to do good, to be kind, to be compassionate, to be empathetic. Use all your character traits as a soul to be in service and to be a contributor of a great story of love and compassion and kindness. I had mentioned earlier that I had the opportunity to learn with an actor by the name of Kirk Douglas. And Kirk shared with me an interesting story when I shared this course with him, actually. And he shared something really kind of humorous. He said, as an actor, he always wanted to be able to play any part, because a good actor can play any part. Now, he got what they call typecasted, I think they call it, where he kept getting these parts where he was a tough guy or a cowboy or a warrior or a thief or something like that. But it was always like these macho, tough kind of. And you know, he felt bad as an actor. I, as an actor, want to be able to play any part. Well, so he heard that they were auditioning for a part of a new movie called Lust for Life. It was the story of Vincent van Gogh, the artist, a sensitive, struggling artist. Kirk said, I want that part. That's so out of character for me. I've never played a part like that. And so he auditioned for the part, and he got the part. And news broke in Hollywood. Kirk Douglas is going to be starring in Lust for Life, playing the sensitive, struggling artist, Vincent van Gogh. Well, so Kirk's buddy, another actor by the name of John Wayne, calls him up the next day and says, Kirk, what's this I hear about you? You took a sissy part of Vincent van Gogh? Come on, what's a cowboy like you doing taking a sissy part like this? Well, Kirk says to John Wayne, who really only played cowboy. He said, John, we're not cowboys. We're actors, John. And Kirk said, John wasn't really a great actor because he only could play cowboys. I wanted to be a great actor. I wanted to be able to act out a character if I needed to. In the world of soulfulness, to really be you and to really serve your purpose and maximize your meaning, you need to sometimes be able to act out of character. Sometimes suddenly people are going to turn to you and ask you to do something. You're going to take care of organizing this party. Me, I'm not an organized guy. I'm not an organized guy at all. Well, if you're soulful, you might see that as an opportunity to break loose a little bit from being casted too much in your character. Maybe step out of that. Maybe you could do that. The greats that are described in the Torah were all people who had the ability to act out of character. That's a soul moment. That's a soul moment. For instance, Abraham. Abraham was identified with the character trait of kindness. And yet, if you look at his whole life, it was all about acting out of character. It all starts off with God saying, go leave your home, leave your birthplace. For a kind man to leave his family and to leave his father and leave his mother, that's a hard thing to do. And then he has a nephew, Lot, who's somewhat problematic. And Avram realizes that he has to part ways with Lot. That's a hard thing for a kind man to do. Later on, he and his wife had problems having a child, and his wife asks him to have a child with Hagar, her maidservant, which another time we'll talk about what that's all about. But again, that's a hard thing to do. That's not very kind to see the pain in your wife's eyes. She asked him to do it, but he had to transcend kindness. And then his ultimate test in life was he was asked to sacrifice his son. Now, that's not a kind man. When you look at the story of Abraham, who was the epitome of kindness, his whole story was about acting out of character, being harsh, maybe being judicious. But a great soul, when needed to, they are able to act out of character. Same thing with Isaac. The character trait of Isaac was power, in Hebrew referred to as gvura. But if you look at the story of Isaac, he doesn't come across like a man of power. That's because, again, in his life situation, he was being asked to act out of character in order to exercise soulfulness. Jacob was identified with the character trait of truth. You look at his story in life. His story was all about, well, if I had to lie, am I able to lie? I mean, imagine a guy's in Germany, and the Nazis knock on your door, and this guy is a completely straight guy, and he's only told the truth his whole life, and the Nazis say, is your dad here? Oh, wow. Can he act out of character and say, no, my dad's not here? In practicing soulfulness and living the total you, you need to be able to immerse yourself in your character, not be controlled by your character. And sometimes, and it won't be as much as these greats in the Torah probably, but sometimes you'll be asked to act out of character, to be out of your comfort zone, to again be in control, to live your purpose. Sometimes you're going to have to do things you don't feel like doing. You're going to have to do things that aren't really so natural to the character traits that you have, but hey, I'm a soul, and I'm not my character. And if in this situation I need to act out of character, I can do it, because I'm here to serve a purpose. And that purpose is to bring greater good and greater love and greater kindness in the world. And if the greater love means that I have to act out of character in this situation, I'll do it. I can do it. I'm a soul. A number of years ago, I'm on a plane and I'm looking through the magazine, and I came across an ad for plastic surgery. It was a very interesting ad because it actually had a list of all the things you could do with the exact price of everything. And I couldn't believe the things you could. I didn't really know that you could do all this, your eyebrows, your chin, your nose, your cheeks. And so I took out my calculator, figured, hey, what's it going to cost to get a new me? And I went through, it wasn't bad. And they also have a plan with a credit card that you could do. who are you anyways? Are you your body? I mean, people want to feel good about themselves, and they think that to feel good about themselves, they have to look good. But in living a life that's purposeful and meaningful, soulful, then it's not about looking good. It's not even about feeling good. It's about doing good. It's not about having a good time. It's about doing a good deed. So a number of years ago, I was at my friend's home, and on his desk, he had a picture of an old, decrepitated woman. She looked like she was in her, I don't know, like in her 90s. And I asked him, I said, "Is this your grandma?" He said, "No, no." "Is this your great aunt?" I said, "No, no." Well, I said, "Who is this?" He said, "Well, actually, I don't know her." I said, "What do you mean you don't know her? Why do you have a picture of this woman on your desk?" He said, "Well, I mean, she was Miss America 1920. I said, "Miss America 1920? I mean, why do you have a picture of Miss America 1920? I mean, I can understand a picture of Miss America 1920 and 1920 when she won that beauty pageant, but why do you have a picture of Miss America when she's 90 years old?" He said, "It humbles me and reminds me she must have thought she was really something in 1920. You see, so many of us are losing our sense of self because we think our sense of self is how good we look, or how rich we are, or how famous we are, or how many likes we have on Facebook. And if you really want to live a life that's purposeful and meaningful, forget about that. Again, nobody's saying don't be rich, and nobody's saying don't take care of your body, and nobody's saying don't look good. But that's not the basis of what you're here to do. That's not really what it's all about. And so, and sometimes the only way a person really wakes up to themselves and discovers a life of purpose of meaning is a crisis. So I had a student of mine, his name was Sam. And Sam was a professional basketball player. And his whole life was about basketball. Everybody he hung out with, his whole vocabulary was just about basketball. And he was in Europe. He was a really successful basketball player playing professionally in Europe. And it was one game, and he went up for a shoot, and he came down on his ankle, and it was really bad. And there he was lying on the court, and his coach runs up, and this guy's in excruciating pain. The first thing he says is, "Coach, I know this is bad. I know it's bad. I'm going to work hard. I'll be back in the game. I know I'm going to be out of the season. I'll be back in the game." His coach looked at him and said, "Sam, sorry to tell you, but you're out of the game. You're out of the game forever. I know this wound. You're out of the game." So Sam died on the court. I mean, not as a soul, but Sam was playing a basketball, man. And that day, gone. He was no longer a basketball player. To live a soulful, purposeful, meaningful life, how do you handle those kinds of situations? Well, what did Sam do? Sam said, "Okay, I'm a soul. I used to play a basketball player. Okay, so I'm being given a new part to play." You see, one of the ways to really live a full life, a whole life, a total life, is learning how to die. Now, we learned that you never die. Well, you don't die, but the character died. That character, Sam, the basketball player, died. Well, Sam decided that he'd pursue a new career. And he decided that he wanted to do something that maybe he felt would be more purposeful and contribute more to the world, for himself anyways. And so Sam decided that he'd be a teacher. Too bad he was a better basketball player. I'm just joking. The point is that in order to really grow, to be alive, to be powerful, the Torah says that a person needs to learn and know how to die. In order to really tap into the highest wisdom, the greatest power, you need to learn how to die. Now, of course, nobody's interested in suicide. Certainly, the Torah is not encouraging suicide. But what the Torah is really telling us, again, to live your purpose, to live your meaning, you might have to let a character that you've been playing die in order to assume a new role that you're playing, a new service that you're offering. It's like, imagine you're a seed. Well, the only way you can grow is if you die as a seed to become a sapling. And the only way you as a sapling can grow is if you die as a sapling to become a tree. Or let's say you're a caterpillar. The only way you could become a butterfly is you have to allow yourself to die as a caterpillar in order to be a butterfly. In the practice of soulfulness, in living a purposeful, meaningful life, in order to really serve and really contribute to a bigger story, sometimes we're going to have to let the past pass. You know, maybe before I was playing this character and I was providing this service, maybe I'm a soul and I've got a new service to play. In our essence, we are goodwill. In our essence, we only want to bring love. In our essence, we only want to contribute to a story of kindness and compassion and bringing and helping people live a better life. There's no better life than helping others have a better life. But sometimes, in order to live a purposeful, meaningful life, you have to let the character you were playing until now and then assume the new part that you're playing from now on, and maybe again. And you know, probably when you look back at it, you might have died a couple of times in terms of the character, but you as a soul never die, because you as a soul are committed to whatever situation you're in. You're going to serve to bring more happiness to people, more goodness to people. You're going to do more kindness. You're going to be more integrative. You're going to help people be more good. There's no better life than helping others have a better life.